All right, everybody. It is my honor to be in conversation with Jesper today. Welcome, Jesper, to Config.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
We're so glad you are. I'd like to start off. You were a child of the personal computer era. And these are not the computers that we have today. These were computers that had real constraints. How did that influence you?
So my first computer was a CX81. That was 1981, and I was 11 years old. And it had was black and white, had 1K ROM memory. I later upgraded to 16K, but you know, that I think that started the whole, like my whole career basically, because finally I felt I had a tool that I was, even if it was very basic and simple, I felt very connected to it. And we discussed it a little bit. And I think that was also the first time that I discovered that limitations actually sparks your creativity. You couldn't even do graphics on the CX81. You had to do an X or a Y and move them around in a kind of a maze. And a little bit like the first Tetris was made, So, yeah, that's how I got into the tech world. Yeah.
And fast forwarding quite a bit through Acne, through making film commercials, we get to the OP1. Can you tell the story of how the OP1 was created? And also maybe make sure that everyone knows what teenage engineering and the OP1 is for the 2 or 3 people that maybe don't know what it is.
Oh, yeah, yes. So you see some images behind us, which is basically a linear story of how teenage engineering started. My background is that I started as a graphic designer. My father was an architect, so I didn't want to compete with him. I wanted to stay on the side, so I started graphic design. And then I did some record covers and stuff like that. And then I moved to directing. So I kind of learned how to basically graphic design, but you start to move the camera more or less. And I also always draw my own storyboards and stuff like that. And then I felt in the advertising industry that I felt a little bit like restricted. So I felt, I had this idea that maybe you can sell just creativity, that is the product. And it can end up, in a product or in a campaign, or that's why I started Acne, which later became, we had a jeans division, but we also did computer games and stuff like that. I left that when I felt I was like, okay, this is done. And then I had a break for a couple of years. And then we just met a couple of friends, shared a space. I started collecting cars because you make a lot of money when you make commercials. It was like good times back then. So I started collecting Lamborghinis, had a garage, and then I started to feel that I wanted to build things again, And so I just did that. I bought a CNC machine and started to build models and kind of inspired other people in the garage, Maybe because I really didn't want to start a company again. I don't like.
Why not?
Maybe I should ask you. It's really.
This is an interview, not a speech about the decision to start or not start. But
but handling employees and all that, it's and meetings and all that. It's super boring, and I don't do it. So, but I found out later that I really had to create my own space or company because I couldn't be employed anywhere else, I don't know why, but it's, so I had to create my own space together with like-minded people. So I started to build models, and one day we had in front of us a small synthesizer and the clock radio. And we were like, shall we do the clock, radio or the synth, the clock radio? We love both products. But then finally we said, okay, the synth is a little bit more challenging to do. And we all love music, so we went for the synth, which became the OP1.
So the OP1 is just an absolutely iconic product. And can you tell us more about the process it took to get to that design that you've evolved, but for that product have not changed?
Yeah, so you see some images here from my illustrated document. So I had a couple of ideas, and most of them were based on, when I was young, when I was like 14 and 15, my big brother, he used to work in a music store.
Yep.
So I borrowed some instruments from him every weekend that I could fit in my backpack, which was a 4-track recorder, some Boss pedals like a delay, chorus and stuff like that, some small drum machine or some Japanese synth, from Roland or something. And if you look at the OP1, it's actually exactly those parts that I borrowed from my brother's store that I had in my backpack. That is the OP1. So that was like the start, how I tried to make, I'm not a musician, but I tried to make music when I was 15, and these were the components that I needed to make something that sounded okay. Again, that it was what the OP1 is. The next thing was the challenge to almost lay out how I used to work when I was young. So first you start with like a synth sound and the drum. So I have these keys on the left side of the machine, and then you mix it, or then you record it to tape. So I have a tape symbol, and then you mix it. So everything is like super logical. But I worked on it for like 2 years or so, And one thing to remember is we were 4 guys. 2 of them were like software guys. One learned electronics from scratch.
Wow.
I never done any industrial design, more or less, so I had to learn CAD. I started with a software called First Form C on Mac, and then I tried, I needed some more CAD stuff, and I was like Ashlar Vellum. You know about that? It's a really limited CAD software. But then, so I had to learn from scratch, how to CAD and mechanical engineering and stuff like that. So, but that was the fun part. We learned over time, while we were building. So.
And even then, you were curating and choosing collaborators. And many of those collaborators are still people that you're working with today, many years later.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you choose a collaborator.
I think it's intuition. Can be random. To me, I rather go, take a chance, and then it work out over time, more or less, than try to analyze too much before. So I'm really quick at, taking decisions, and then other people, kind of take over and, fix it later for me. But I still work like that I can hire people just if I see they have something. Maybe it's like super fun to have a beer with them, and they have a lot of great stories to tell. Then I want them close, and I want to work with them. So, what was that your question, or?
Part of it,
yeah.
I mean, I guess another part of it, and some people are going to be watching this interview later, I'm sure, and go, their dream will be to work at Teenage Engineering. So I'm sure that what they want me to ask you right now is, how do they get a job with Teenage Engineering? What are you looking for? What's that intuition?
So we had one guy that knocked. We started in a garage. So one guy knocked on the door and said, "I love your products. Okay, come down for coffee." And he's head of development now. But he actually started, we were like, okay, he's like a nice guy. And so we said, and we had an empty spot in marketing, so he actually started in marketing. But he was kind of useless in that, at that, and I think we put him in the support department. But we, exactly like that, we really like to hang out. He's one of my closest friends. Still today, and he's been with us for like 12 years or so. He's head of development, and I'm not sure he's like super good at it either, but I tried to push him, maybe, have you tried to build? I sent him to like a guitar building course also like a year ago. Yeah, you just do things and then you try to fix it over time, I guess,
And I mean, like, is it looking for just people that you vibe with, that it's like very peaceful, or do you also look for people that you disagree with?
So, actually, yes. So my role, maybe I should start with how we are organized. So it's like a top-down, more or less, organization. But so I'm the CEO, and then I have a leadership team, and then but I'm also head of design. So this is more like the CEO thing is more like a virtual thing. I'm basically still at the drawing board, and work with the design team. But we did it that way, so we always have someone that is like close to the product that make the final decisions. But I don't basically put my fingers into the, like daily operations and stuff like that. But if they have a tricky problem, they come to me, and I'm more like the moral kind of compass, and so they basically run the business, and they call me, if they are in trouble or, what was the question?
The question is, on the design side, how often do you hire people that you agree with only?
Oh, yeah.
Or how often is it that people, like you hire them and you actually disagree creatively?
You all know that, like middle management, it's bad to have, you should visit, I will not mention any names, but it's like a Swedish company, big Swedish furniture company. It's like a couple of, like 3 or 4 people, and it's like huge middle management, kind of like gray mass, which is, and usually they don't move, they just stay there, and they don't want anything to like interfere, or if it's like crazy ideas, they try to, like keep it status quo. So my role, and it's the same at our company as well, actually, so the operational team, they kind of hire the same people that they, in their age, stuff like that. So, but I bypass them. So I just hired a sales guy without almost telling the head of sales person, because I felt, we need this young person to do some other kind of sales, just to, and he's French, and he's, so I've done that a couple of times just to mix up the culture. Which is also, like really old people. One guy that was like super depressed, I hired him. He's been at work. I hired him like four years ago, and he's been at work for like 1 week in total, I think, for 4 years. We also have one guy that he's at work, but he hasn't done any work for 8 years, But he's nice also for the culture. I like to, he's almost like a mascot, so. And he knows it. We had a competition, like almost like a lottery at the company, during COVID. And the first prize was, was cash and a PlayStation 5 and all. And of course, that guy won the first prize. So he was like, but I don't even work, man. You know, like, and I get all this nice, I get a salary, and so it was, yeah. I think it's like this. It's like, and you know that as well. You know, if you replace someone and you say, you know, maybe you don't fit in the team, someone else that was previously quite good can take that place. You know, it's kind of this group dynamic that can happen. So you will never have like a problem-less company or organization. And it's also like always, you know, you always have to reorganize and redraw the charts and so.
When you think about the design culture of teenage engineering, I mean, this is a design culture that's created what externally people see as hit after hit after hit.
Yeah.
I mean, all your products sell out basically immediately. And, you know, it's maybe the design culture people want to most join in the world. And how do you contrast that with the design cultures of other famous design companies like Apple or, you know, IDEO or, you know, IKEA?
So you know, all those companies that you mentioned, basically they have a style, right? They have some kind of identity or DNA. And I was visiting IKEA like 2 weeks ago, and I talked to, they have a new CEO of the product development department, and I said, you know, IKEA needs to change style. I'm tired of the IKEA style. Why don't we just do something new, you know, like, can't we just skip the light wood and, you know, that stuff? And I think it's a little bit like, because we are much smaller than those companies you mentioned, I really like them, you know, like all the great design that have come from Apple, IKEA as well, you know, and IDEO, I don't know so much about them. Honestly, I'm not, you know, like that into design. But it's true. I don't follow. You know, I don't know any names or. It was super funny. It was this guy that knocked on the door also, and people were like super stressed at the office, and I didn't know him, and that was Virgil Abloh. I was like, okay, hey guy, you know, like welcome in, and we sat down and played some synths, but people got super nervous at the office, and I didn't know who he was, more or less. But we became friends, and I miss him a lot. But I think to me, it's important that you do other things in your life. Otherwise, you know, it's like kind of this circularity in a bad way when it comes to ideas or, you know, how philosophy and.
Yep. No, I mean, I think it's easy to hit a spot and have a creative rut.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I remember it this time that, you know, what's the design culture at our place? Basically, it's a single brain operation. So I'm the only one that is allowed to do design. But I have a design team of like 8 to 10 people. And they are like, please, Jesper, you know, can I do some design now? You know, no, you're not ready yet. And the reason is design is extremely hard. And to me, design is everything. It's politics, it's you know, culture, it's the brand, it's so much, you know. And for example, I have one young guy at the office, and he's like, I tried to make him, okay, design a keyboard, a musical keyboard. And he started to design. And I told him, you know, you need to know how to play the instrument before you design it. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh no, I don't have time for that. And so I think it's super important. So I've been working on an organ, a classical organ, for 5 years now. And so I sit every night for at least like 1 to 2 hours, rehearsing the organ with the pedals, and I'm super bad. I'm not musical, but I really need to understand what makes an organ an organ. And so when I'm done with that, then I can finalize that product.
Yep.
So I think it is like that, You need to know, if you design something, you need to know exactly why you do what you do. Otherwise, to me, design is an important. Then otherwise, it's called styling. So I told Volvo that. I met Volvo also, and I said, you shouldn't call this, the design department. This is you're working with styling. Doesn't have car design has nothing to do with design anymore. It's just styling.
Yeah. Wow.
Doesn't solve any problems, right? It's just crazy spaceship looks, and they got, of course, super upset and kicked us out of the project, but it was worth it. But I asked them, this simple question: why do you want a car to look like a spaceship? And they say, we don't want that. But every model you have looks like, a spaceship. And they didn't have an answer to it. And again, what is a car? I think cars are very special. It's not design. It's not something. It's like its own unique kind of discipline to work with, like cars and vehicles.
What about the Nothing phone? That was something that you. The Nothing phone. That's a project where it came out with an incredible style result.
Yeah,
Carl is here with us today.
Is Carl here?
Oh, he's not here.
I think
he was certainly invited.
Oh yeah. I had dinner with Carl Pei last night, so I hope I don't say it. I prepared him that
Rasmus also, I think.
Oh yeah.
He texted me earlier, but I wasn't
So some of the slides you will see in the background is actually unreleased Nothing products, and I was like, I put them in the presentation, and he was like, oh yeah, okay, why not? But
the question is going to be, Nothing, like, where is the problem that you're solving versus what's the styling there? Can you break that down for us?
So when Carl came, I really liked the idea. He came to our office and he said, I was still working on, a small desk, working at my computer, doing some CAD, and Carl more or less sat next to me and said, hey, my name is Carl, I want to work with you guys. But I'm also looking at other design studios in the world, So he was basically meeting a lot of designers, but I was still working, and I was like, but then he said, I want to make consumer electronics fun again, exciting. And I felt the same way, growing up with the early Mac and Walkmans and all that. And so basically what we have today when it comes to tech is that you design everything around the display, a touch display. And the bevels and all the radius and all that. So, but first of all, I said to Carl, okay, we can work together, but we have to be partners. I can't be like a consultant.
Yes.
Because we need to be partners. We need to be friends, and because it will be other problems over the way, regarding the brand and stuff. And he was like thinking about it for a week, and then he said, yes. And then we started to work. And usually when I start like bigger projects like that, I usually start making some kind of book, like a manifest. And we played around with different names, and Carl came up with the Nothing name, which I loved. I presented a logo. I love this idea. No one really got it, but I presented that in that little book I did. So I do my own books as well. It's like also like a single brain thing, or like one person thing. So I do it over a weekend, like put all the images and ideas in one book, send it to like the print shop, and you get it. So it's like a 72-hour process.
Wow, it's quite the sprint.
Yeah, but I want to talk about the logo. The first idea I had for the Nothing logo was that it was a hole. So it was just a hole. And you can put a hole anywhere, right?
Uh-huh.
I still think it's like a brilliant idea, you know. No one have, you can't print it, but you can punch it out, right? So it's kind of, I still love that idea.
That's a cool idea.
But sometimes I can't convince Carl to do everything. But what we did, the design process was that we had two ideas. First one was, there has been some transparent electronics. So I said to him, it's fine, let's own transparency. So that will be, you know, like every time someone sees some electronic that is transparent, then they will think of Nothing. So it's more like this kind of marketing idea that even if Apple have done it, you know, and you've seen a lot of other products that are transparent, you can actually claim it and make it that you own it. So that was the other idea. The third idea was that because of you only have the display, and we didn't have time to work on the user interface, I, you know, basically flipped the phone over and started to draw interesting things on the back. So we made this glyph system with lights, and which also becomes kind of like a logo when people see it, you know, like, so it kind of, the idea was also to you know, like help the brand and in the beginning. Then you need to be maybe a little bit bolder and more recognizable than after a couple of years. But we worked really hard to make it, you know, like bold statements and, you know, lights here and a little bit maybe too much, but I still like it.
So almost the problem was...
This is the first sketch I did on the back
no
of the Nothing phone, yeah.
That's cool serendipity.
So as you see, I still work with like a pen and markers. Not every day, but I know I'm going to presentations like this, so sometimes I spend some extra time doing hand sketches, you know, so it looks a little bit handmade, you know. My first render on the phone, on the Nothing Phone 1. Yeah. And also keep it simple, you know, black, white, one red color. Red, it always works, red, white, and black. You know. Teenage engineering, we use it more orange, you know, but simple tricks. It's also about, to me, design, because I grew up with, my father was an architect.
Yes.
So I have, you know, like, I grew up under his kind of like drawing desk. So I slept under his desk, and so more or less I have it in the blood. So I don't think of design as something, you know, like a job or it's more like it was part of the family and how we lived. Everything was like we did our own Christmas cards and you know, furniture.
Can you tell us more about how your family, but also your heritage, your country, influenced your design process?
Yeah, my father was Dutch, right? So my father was Dutch, my mother is Swedish. A lot of Dutch guys came to Sweden in the 60s, made Swedish girls pregnant, got stuck there. So I'm the result of that. It's not like that anymore, you know. It's more like, I don't know. But, and my mother is a banker. So that was kind of interesting. She was like good at handling money, but my father was really poor and didn't sell himself either. So but he was drawing a lot and making a lot of stuff, but only at home. He couldn't sell it to other people. It was like kind of, I don't know.
But you're literally the fusion of business and design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I got 50-50. And also my father is from Holland, and the design school there is basically, like the same tradition as Bauhaus. And the tradition of Bauhaus is that you actually have to, if you make a chair with textile, you have to know everything about everything. So you have to know how to weld, you have to know how to make the fabric, and yeah, sorry.
No, this is great.
I also looking at the clock, right?
That's okay.
So I think it's more about knowing, if you make something, you have to know how every part is made, more or less. Anyway.
Pivoting a bit, I'm curious, you've been thinking so much about the future and AI. How do we make models less boring?
Like AI models, or?
Yes.
So we had one idea that I told you on the phone, that I want to feed, my AI with my father's work, my work. Where's my Ivana? Where are you? That's my daughter. She's sitting there. Imagine you feed the AI with your kind of like family tradition. It can be, like the creative, and then that could be interesting. That could be a good model. But I don't know so much about. I think it's all about positive thinking. Having a positive attitude. Technology will always win. We know that, right? So if you're resistant and scared, then you will lose. So you have to see it from a, like a positive side, and see, like how can we use it in the best possible way, and also for humanity, right? So I think, to me, creativity is positive thinking.
Love that. As you engage in that positive thinking about our future right now, and imagine what the world might look like, what comes to mind, especially with the context of AI?
We are actually working on a really big idea that we started to work on 2 years ago. It's kind of, it's a little bit related to AI, or it is related to AI, but it doesn't depend on it. But it's a really big, but also like a small idea at the same time. But probably the biggest idea next to AI. And I promised myself not to say what it is, but I always talk to my colleagues, oh no, it's said it, No, I won't tell. We can talk about it later, but I won't say what it is. But it. I think so. I can say it in this way. I think the world needs non-commercial alternatives. There are serious non-commercial alternatives to like technical platforms.
Huh.
But because I think, I think we all feel that, for example, internet doesn't work as good anymore as it did when it was like in the right balance between commercial and non-commercial. It was like a couple of years when it was like the perfect balance. But now when advertising have like completely taken over, then it gets, like you don't want to be there anymore. So maybe that's why I see that, we need an alternative to a lot of like technologies. And maybe, AI will be the same thing, that you will have the mass market AI that solves, like a lot of infrastructure, logistical problems. But then you also might need an AI curated for really good things.
When do you design for yourself, and when do you design for others?
I always design for myself. If I wouldn't buy it or like use it, then I would probably be super depressed. And I've been in advertising business, so I know how it is. I was a prostitute for like 20 years before I started.
Do you believe in user testing?
Huh?
Do you believe in user testing or user research?
No. No. I mean, was it the wrong answer? Or was that a new feature you introduced today? Sorry. I think, to me, I mean, if you build your software, right, and if you test it, it's fine. It's like one person. What I don't like is when it becomes, like group decisions. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That you don't know why people say what they say, and you don't know if it is the truth,
Well, I think we've got time for one big last question. I'm curious, you've got all these designers in this room. What is your advice to them, and what do you believe is the responsibility of a designer today?
I was prepared for this question, and I said, okay,
I did tell him it was
okay,
coming.
Dylan, why don't you answer that yourself? Of course, I don't know. I mean, it's a big thing. I would say the responsibility. Go back to yourself. Basically, when I switched, from advertising to something that I really wanted to do, like something meaningful in my life. And I think you can see that in teenage engineering, in what we do, that you can see that it's meaningful to us, the creators behind it. We really don't care about if the audience like it. It's important to us. So I would say everything you do from now on should be, you should think, you will look at it in 20 years and still be proud of it, first of all. And then you know that it will not hurt anyone. I mean, all the basic stuff, that it's respectful. I would say, if you just go look 20 years from now at your own work, and if you like it, it will include all those good values, and like it's timeless, it has quality, it has it's respectful. So it's for us to reach like the highest level together, I would say.
And what is the role of unique design? What is the role of unique design, especially in the era that we're in today?
So good design, to me, doesn't have to be beautiful. It has to be personal. And what I miss today is a lot of this personality, because I want to see who has done a certain design. So if I look at these chairs, I want to know, oh, it's Knut Rasmussen from Denmark who did it, because this is like Knut Rasmussen's style, right? I want to see that. To me, design is, we were in a book, I brought you a little gift here, but we were in a bookstore here in San Francisco, me and my daughter. And it had like a handwritten sign on the wall. It was this kind of, like Marxistic bookstore, but it said, corporations are not people. Which made me think, it's quite interesting, right? That, some people, maybe you hide yourself, your voice behind the corporation, or why can't the corporation be people? I think what you're doing here today with the conference kind of proved the opposite, right? All the people, it's all about us, that we meet, have a personality. You have your style, blue jeans. I have, like black jeans, or they used to be black. That we have, our own personality, our own voice. This is my bar I started a bar. But I think it's super important that design is not about beauty, but good design is also equal to good problem solving or good engineering. So if you solve a problem in a really elegant, from an engineering perspective way, then you have solved the design problem as well. And I bought this book because I was trying to find, I really want to give Dylan something, for inviting me. And then I came to this. This is a story I have been carrying with me for many years. It's the story of why a fork is designed as a fork as we know it today, and the knife and the chopsticks. And I guess 99.9% in this room doesn't know why a fork looks like it looks, or a knife, or why we have a knife and fork, or why we have chopsticks. So you need to buy this book. It's called, basically, it's the story about the knife and fork, but also about the paper clip. But the knife and fork stories, you don't know it either, right?
I don't.
No.
I'd love to hear it. I guess I'll read the book.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Which also is kind of interesting because it's like this kind of last answer to the last question is that we have a lot of egos today, right? But if we are part of the evolution, and it's also in that story that, you do your little part on the timeline of humanity. You move the dot a little bit forward, and that's the role you have. You don't have to, revolutionize, society. It's just we do it together. I mean, we just move the humanity forward together.
One little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Jesper, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.